and sound, stuck in the ground, too lost to be found. You're just asleep, and it's time to leave. Come on and rise up, take a breath, you're alive now. Can't you hear the voice of Jesus calling us out from the grave like Lazarus? You're brand new, power of death couldn't hold you. Can't you hear the voice of Jesus calling us out from the grave like Lazarus? Out from the grave like Lazarus. When he said your name, the thing that filled your veins was more than blood. It's a kind of love that washes sin away. Now the door is open wide, and the stone's been rolled aside. The old is gone, the light has come, so come on and rise up. Take a breath, you're alive now. Can't you hear the voice of Jesus calling us out from the grave like Lazarus? You're brand new, power of death couldn't hold you. Can't you hear the voice of Jesus calling us out from the grave like Lazarus? Like Lazarus. Oh, He's calling us to walk out of the dark. He's giving us new resurrected hearts. Oh, He's calling us to walk out of the dark. He's giving us new resurrected hearts. Come on and rise up, take a breath, you're alive now. Can't you hear the voice of Jesus calling us out from the grave like Lazarus? You're brand new, power of death couldn't hold you. Can't you hear the voice of Jesus calling us out from the grave like Lazarus? He's calling you out. Give me up from the grave. Stay there. Rise up, calling. Rise up, calling. Out from the grave like Lazarus. I love you, Lord.
Hey, good morning and welcome, everybody.
Oh, your
Hey, it's
mercy
great to have you here today. Come
never
right on in and find a seat. Hey, let me begin with just a couple of very important announcements, if you don't mind. The first one is, ladies, why don't you raise your hand? All the ladies of our church, all the ladies, if you don't mind, raise your hand. Hey, ladies, we have a women's gathering that is scheduled just in a couple of weeks. That's on March 20th. That's a Saturday evening. And so, ladies, it's just you all here leading worship. A lot of these ladies will actually be leading us on that evening. Jacqueline is going to be doing our main speaking. And so, ladies, please go ahead and put that on your calendar, 5 p.m. to 6 p.m., March 20th. But also, for our kids ministry, we have this simulcast that's going to be shown here, and it's called Superstart, and it's March 12th and 13th. And here we are. Tomorrow begins March, and we're on our way into spring. Amen. And so Superstart is a part of that. And so if you got kids, grandkids, and you want to be a part of Superstart, you can speak to Renee about that. She can get you signed up. The church is paying for all of that, but you can be a part of that great event. And also, let me say, we're so grateful for the offering and the giving that happens through our church. May God continue to bless each and every. We're so thankful for all that happens through the giving. And I just want to welcome you today. It's great to see each and every one of you. Hey, it's great to know that there's no snow out there on the parking lot and no bitter cold temperatures. Amen. Yeah. So it's great to have you today, and it's great also for all of you that are joining us online today. With me coming out here, you pretty well know Blake is preaching today, and he did a fantastic job in the first service. In fact, he's got a great clip that he's going to show you on the screen. I didn't remember saying it quite that way. You'll have to, just patience, okay? You'll get to see it just in a few moments. Hey, but it's great to have you today. Thank you so much for coming. Hey, this first song, you can just remain seated, and the praise team's going to lead us in the song, and that kind of sets up for the message today. Why don't you be praying for Blake as he comes out and speaks for us today. Hey, it's great to have you. Let's worship.
I am not a stranger to the dark. Hide away, they say. We don't want your broken heart. I've learned to be ashamed of all my scars. Run away, they say. No one will love you as you are. But won't let them break me down to dust. I know that there's a place for us, for we are glorious. When the sharpest words wanna cut me down, gonna stand and fight, gonna drown out. I am brave, I am bruised, I am who I'm meant to be. This is me. Look out, 'cause here I come, and I'm marching on to the beat I drum. I'm not scared to be seen. I make no apologies. This is me.
Another round of bullets hits my skin. Go far away, 'cause today I won't let the shame sink in. We are bursting through the barricades, reaching for the sun.
We are warriors.
That's where we begun.
Won't let them break me down to dust. I know that there's a place for us.
For your glory,
The sharpest words wanna cut me down. Gonna stand and fight, gonna drown them out. I am brave, I am bruised, I am who I'm meant to be. This is me. Look out, 'cause here I come, and I'm marching on to the beat I drum. I'm not scared to be seen. I make no apologies. This is me.
there's nothing the sharpest words wanna cut me down.
Gonna stand the flood, gonna drown 'em out.
This is brave.
This is bruised, this is who I'm meant to be. This is me. Look out, 'cause here I come. Marching on to the beat I drum. I'm not scared to be seen. I make no apologies.
This is me. This is me.
Awesome. Hey, good morning, guys. Welcome to Real Life Church. If you are joining us online, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you guys for being here. I'm so excited to be here in person. Weather's getting better. And so, yeah, give our band a round of applause again. That takes a lot to pull that song off, man. I try to sing that song in my car. You guys know that song? I try to sing that in my car. It's like getting up into a register that, it gets scary. I think I could maybe cause a car accident with some of that. So, yeah, welcome. Hey, my name is Blake Thomas. If you don't know me, if you're online joining us and you don't know me, my name is Blake Thomas, and I'm the youth pastor here. And hey, Hunter, would you mind running up here and hooking me up with the TV? But I'm continuing on a series that we've been in for a few weeks called What If, and Clint's been doing this for 3 weeks, and we're kind of just asking all these kind of what if questions about our faith and our relationship to God, and what if God, what if he doesn't answer our prayers? What if things don't go the way that we hope they go? And so I'm continuing on that, and I'm really excited to get to kind of move into a topic I've been talking a lot about with our junior and high schoolers, and talking a lot about and just reading and studying. And so, so I'm going to kind of dive into this, and I want to start with a question this morning that I hope makes sense and I hope resonates with you, and that is, what if God just won't take it away? What if there's something you have to deal with, or something going on, something about you? Maybe it's something that you were just born with. Maybe it's something that happened to you later in life. Maybe it's a physical ailment or something about you, or something that you have to deal with, and God just won't take it away. And, to me, it's like I know there's things about me that sometimes when I look at myself, it's like I don't like these certain things, these certain tendencies I have, or whatever it may be. And they create in me an insecurity. And so maybe you can identify some part of you that you just have to deal with, and it creates an insecurity in you. And so I was thinking about this, and we all deal with insecurities. Every one of us deals with insecurities, and they may all look different, but we all deal with them. And even the great Clint Cook deals with insecurities. He does, I mean it. I know you wouldn't think it, but when I was kind of researching this message, I went back and was looking at a message that Clint did a couple years back about insecurity, and I noticed Clint started kind of talking about his own insecurities a little bit. And it got a little weird. And I know he was talking about this clip, but it just got a little strange. And so I went ahead and pulled the clip so we could look at it. Talking about Clint, this is Clint talking about his insecurities. So check this out, and I'll show you what I mean here.
Today we're talking about insecurities. Because you bullies all body shaming me because I'm too plump, because I'm socially awkward. Well, notice with me, maybe you're not so smart. Maybe you're not as good a reader. Maybe math is something that you struggle with. So why don't you go ahead and eat garbage?
And now, you see what I mean? That's weird, right? That is weird. So I'm hoping, we all deal with insecurities, but I'm hoping maybe not to get that personal today. That one got a little strange. So we all deal with insecurities. And I think if we think about it, we all have things about ourselves that maybe we're unsure of, that we don't like. And here's where I want to take this. Sometimes that stuff makes us doubt our potential impact with people around us. And it makes us doubt whether or not we can really make an impact with those around us. And for those of us in the room or online, I know all of us are kind of in a different place in our journey, in our life journey, our spiritual journey. But those of us who follow Jesus, we know that we're supposed to make an impact on the people around us. But sometimes we doubt whether or not we can actually be the ones to make that impact. Some of us as parents, right? We know, obviously, we need to raise our kids and make an impact and help them turn out to be the people they need to be, but we doubt that maybe we have the ability to do that, and it kind of creates in us, for whatever reason, whatever that is about us that we doubt, it kind of creates an insecurity in us. And so I want to look at a passage today from 2 Corinthians, and this is Paul talking. This is a letter Paul wrote to the church in Corinth. And let me set this up a little bit, because Paul Paul was a missionary in the first century, lived about the same time as Jesus and then after Jesus. And Paul did more to spread Christianity across the world than anybody in history. I mean, he really was instrumental in just launching this movement. And Paul writes this letter to the church in Corinth, and we have the letter. It's called 1 Corinthians. And it wasn't very well received by the church in Corinth. And then after this, somebody comes in, kind of a false prophet type of teacher comes in and undermines Paul's authority and kind of makes him look manipulative or conceited or like he's trying to trick them and making it all about him. And so now Paul's got this kind of bad reputation in Corinth, and he writes a second letter, and we don't have this letter. It would be awesome if we could read it, but we don't have that letter. Nobody's ever found that letter, but we know it's referenced, and so we know that it exists. And he kind of sends this letter to try to repair it, and then visits Corinth a second time, and he describes this visit as painful because it didn't go that well, and he's trying to repair his reputation. And then finally he writes a third letter to repair his reputation one more time, and that's the book of 2 Corinthians that we have. And so that's where I want to look. And so in this letter, he's trying to kind of mend his reputation of being conceited and explain that he's not conceited and this isn't about him, but it's always been about Jesus. And so I'm going to kind of jump into the middle of this in chapter 12, and I want to show you something he said that's I want to unpack today. He says, to keep me from becoming proud or conceited, I was given a thorn in my flesh, a messenger from Satan to torment me and keep me from becoming proud. 3 different times I begged the Lord to take it away. And so he is begging God, and he's praying and praying that God would take this away. And God responds by saying, each time he said, my grace is all you need. My power works best in weakness. So the answer is no. I mean, Paul is begging that this thorn in his flesh, whatever it is, that it be taken away. And God's answer is no. My grace is all you need. So now, Paul says, I'm glad to boast about my weaknesses so that the power of Christ can work through me. That's why I take pleasure in my weaknesses and in the insults and hardships and persecutions and in the troubles that I suffer for Christ. For when I'm weak, then I'm strong. And so people have kind of debated for a long time what this thorn in the flesh was. What was this thing Paul had to deal with that kept him from becoming proud? And some people think maybe he had epilepsy, maybe he had eyesight, and he thought the eyesight was going to hinder him or slow him down. Some people think maybe he had a speech impediment or some kind of thing with his speech. And he alludes to something like that a couple times in chapter 10. He says, some say Paul's letters are demanding and forceful, but in person he's weak and his speeches are worthless. And so you can imagine that as a missionary or a pastor or preacher, to not be confident in your speaking ability, this would really make you doubt your potential impact. And then 11, he says in chapter 11, I don't consider myself inferior in any way to these super apostles who teach such things. I may be unskilled as a speaker, but I'm not lacking in knowledge. And so, I mean, you can imagine how if he has some kind of thing hindering him like that, something about him, a speech impediment or some kind of poor speech, and he's wanting to spread the news of Jesus across the world, but he's not seen as a skillful speaker, you can see how this would really start to eat away at a person. And so it creates in him this insecurity, and he begs God to take it away. And God's response is, my grace is all you need. And so I do want to, before we move forward, I want to specify, we know whatever this thorn in the flesh was, we know it was not a sin issue. This is not a sin issue that Paul was dealing with, because it would be outside of the character of God, right? If we're praying and begging for God to help us grow beyond a sin issue, for God to say, no, I'm going to make you keep the sin issue. God does not put sin inside us. He's not tempt us. He doesn't put sin issues in our lives, and he certainly wouldn't force them to stay there if we're doing the work ourselves and praying to remove those things from our lives, right? And so this isn't a you're perfect just the way you are message. We're not perfect just the way we are. We don't believe that here. We are a church, we often say come as you are. We believe that everyone can come to Jesus just the way they are, but we also believe you can't stay that way. that you need to keep growing and keep moving forward. And so those of us who follow Jesus, we know that we're in a lifelong journey of always growing. And so we know this isn't a sin issue, but there's something in Paul, something about Paul that he wants to go away, but it's just not going to. And so he just has to live with it, and he has to deal with it, and he has to figure out how to live with it. And so what if there's something in us? What if there's something about us that we just have to deal with? And it's not going away. And instead of it being fixed, it's not going to be fixed, but we just have to learn to navigate life with this. And sometimes it creates this insecurity in us, and then we start to doubt our ability to have an impact or an influence on the people around us. And so, some of us as parents or as teachers or leaders or a boss or even a volunteer, sometimes we think, no one would look up to me. No one would look up to me. I can't have an impact like that guy or like that girl. And if there's any part of you today that's thinking that, then you've uncovered that there may be something about you, a thorn in your flesh, something about you that you don't like, and it's created an insecurity that's caused you to doubt your impact. And so I want to say, every single person in the room here today, everybody online, everyone watching, you all have influence. You all have influence with the people around you. And it's so easy to trick yourself into thinking you don't. Oh, nobody cares about me. I'm the youngest in the family. I don't influence anybody. Well, I'm not the boss at work. I don't influence anybody. Well, I'm not a pastor or teacher. I don't influence anybody. I promise you, every single one of you has influence on the people around you. Now, that influence may be negative. You may have a negative influence because you're not taking advantage of using that influence and letting Jesus work through you in that influence. So it may just be negative, or it may be positive, but either way, there's an influence somewhere. If you're at work and you're like, well, I'm not the boss, I just sit over my cubicle, my little cubicle and mind my business and I don't talk to anybody, there's a good chance that just you not talking to anybody is a negative influence on some of the people around you. Unless they've asked you not to talk to them anymore and nobody wants to talk to you, then just stay in your cubicle and be quiet. But there's an influence there, right? People may be going, that guy, I'm in a good mood every morning, and then that dude just doesn't say a word to me. You see that that's a negative influence. And you may be thinking, well, I didn't say anything. Exactly. Sometimes the lack of that is a negative thing. So we all have influence. The question is, how are we going to use that influence? And so you may be thinking, well, I'm not a good teacher, or I'm not a public speaker. Or maybe you're thinking, well, I'm not cool enough, or I'm too old, or I'm too young. Or maybe you have a physical disability or some kind of sickness or something you live with that you think is going to hinder your ability to have an impact. And this is exactly where Paul was. I've been doing a growth group in the middle of the week on Tuesday mornings. And I got to talk to a lady at the end of the growth group. And this lady has 2 granddaughters in our ministry. One of them has graduated out of our ministry, but 2 granddaughters in Grindstone, our junior high and high school ministry. And they are there, and they are where they are spiritually because of their grandma. That's why they're there, and it's really, really cool. And so we were talking about that, and I was just telling her how awesome it is, the impact she's had on her granddaughters, and how she's always brought them to church, but she's made them feel like it's their choice, and she's always taken advantage of the influence that she has with them. And she was saying, it is really awesome, but it's really scary. And it is scary. It is scary to have influence in someone's life. It's scary to have that kind of responsibility, but we still have the responsibility. And when we make it all about us and we think that it's all on us and we have to use our own strength to make it all happen, then those insecurities get bigger and bigger and the stress gets bigger and bigger. And so how do we learn to navigate through these things that create insecurities? Because God does not want to give us insecurities. I don't think that God was giving Paul an insecurity. But Paul may have allowed something to become an insecurity. And so how do we navigate this the right way? And I want to start just by talking about the word insecure. And if you think about the root word of this word, insecure, it's secure, right? We want to be secure. And so if we talk about synonyms, we'd say stable, solid, firm. We're secure, right? So to be insecure is to be unstable. We're not firm, we're not solid, we're not stable. And this is a problem. This is a problem for all of us, but it's especially a problem if we are wanting to have an influence with the people around us when it comes to our faith and their faith and modeling Jesus for people. I mean, this is a huge problem in our world, is that, you know, if we're not stable, then we're wishy-washy, we're unpredictable. Paul says it one way in Ephesians. He says, when we grow up, when we get this security, when we grow to be mature, then we're no longer like infants. He says we're no longer thrown back and forth by every wave of new teaching. And don't we see this all the time? Like, people are just so influenced and so thrown off by every new piece of information that comes their way. And if we're not solid and secure in our faith, if we're not solid and secure in who we are, then it's too easy for us to be thrown back and forth by every piece of new information, by every person that doesn't like the way we're living or talking. And we're not secure. We're insecure. We're unstable. And so the question is then, what are you focused on? And so that's really what I want to talk about today is I want to talk about, what are we focused on? Where is our focus? And for some of you, this, you know, you may have heard messages like this before. I know for me, like, sometimes I struggle because I'm like, oh, they've probably heard this before and blah, blah, blah. But look, if we've heard it before and we know all the information, then why do we still struggle with it? And so sometimes for some of you, this may be a reminder, right? And some of you, maybe this is just the piece of new information you needed or whatever. But I think we can talk about today that kind of the key to navigating through this. And so let's talk about what you focused on. First one is how others see you. It's so easy, it's almost natural to be focused on how other people see us and what they think about us, right? And here's the deal. I think you should care about what people think about you. I think there's a healthy balance there. You should care. I watch a good amount of reality TV. I see what it looks like when someone truly doesn't care what anybody thinks about them. It ain't pretty. You know what I'm talking about? And so, no reality TV fans in here, huh? That's okay. I shouldn't have admitted it. Now I'm embarrassed. You should care to some degree what people think about you. Because to not care at all, that can get kind of scary, right? But it can't define you. It can't be your main focus to care about, you know, your whole security being built on what people think about you, because you will never find security in that. Because here's the deal, you know how it goes, right? I can go over to this side of the room and these people love me and they go, oh, what a great job. You're doing such a great job. Oh, we just love you so much. Oh, our kids love being in Grindstone. Oh, you're doing so great. And I'm like, yes, I'm doing awesome because they think I'm doing awesome. And then I come over here and these people are like, dude, you're the worst. We turn the service off when you're speaking, or our kids hate it. They're not coming and you're no good and you need to be more serious and blah, you know, whatever it is. And so then I'm down here. And it's just up and down and up and down. And you know people's minds change all the time. Their opinions change all the time, right? So they think that one day, and then the next day they totally switch. I mean, there's no security in that. If I try to build my security on what people think, there's no security in that. I am literally just thrown back and forth by every wave of new teaching, by every new piece of information, by every new opinion, by every new compliment, by every new insult. Constantly just thrown back and forth, and it's up and it's down and it's up and it's down, and it's exhausting. There's no security in basing our worth and security in what people think about us. It just isn't going to happen. And so that leads me to the second one, how you see you. Now this one's where it gets maybe a little weird, because it's a very common thing right now in our culture to preach the message, you do you, the only opinion that matters is yours, you be who you want to be, and that's all that matters, right? No one else matters, only what you think of yourself. Here's the problem with that. I don't always think well of myself. So if my opinion of myself is all that matters, what about when my opinion of myself is not very good? What if there's something about myself I don't like? Then are you saying that because I don't like myself, I don't have worth? My worth is determined not by other people, but just by how I'm feeling by myself. And again, my opinion's gonna change tomorrow. So I have worth and value today, but I don't tomorrow. It's just based on how I feel about myself and how I see myself and what I wanna do with my own life. I don't know about for you. I'll tell you for me, that doesn't work either. There's no security in that. It's up and it's down and it's up and it's down. And if I'm feeling insecure about myself, for someone to say, well, all that matters is what you think. I know, that's the problem. I don't think well of myself all the time. So it doesn't work to draw security from that. It doesn't work to just focus on me all the time. There's got to be something different. And big surprise where this is going. You probably know where this is going, but think about this for a second. How God sees you. Listen, if we're going to have security, stability, then we have to ground that in something that is secure and stable. We have to find something that doesn't change. That's where the security comes from. How God sees you doesn't change. That is secure. That is stable. And so think about this for a second, okay? This is what God says to Paul. My grace is all you need. And so Paul's going, well, what does that mean? Grace is all you need. Think about this. It was God's grace that sent him to suffer. God's grace is what made him go suffer for us so that he could pay the price for our mess so he could spend eternity with us. It's God's grace that made him forgive us and pay that price. And it's God's grace that changed the way God sees us. Because don't you know that once Jesus paid the price for us, when we just accept that and we make that our foundation, that we're right with God, God sees us as holy, he sees us as perfect. Again, that doesn't mean that God doesn't want you to grow, but you're even, you're together. He wants to spend eternity with you. You're holy in his eyes. So literally, his grace changed the way he sees you, and how he sees you doesn't change. His grace is all you need. And so when we can root ourselves in that. Now think about this. Those people around us, and I know we all got them, okay? Those people around us, we just can't stand to be around. We just can't stand, I just can't stand that guy. You know, listen to this. God saw that person as worthy of suffering for, so he could spend eternity with them. And we can't even spend 5 minutes with them. He sees them as worth it. He sees you as worth it. And so because of his grace, he sees us that way. So his grace is all we need if we can ground ourselves in that. And then he says this, he says, my power works best in weakness. Because when we feel on top of everything, when we feel on top of the world and, oh man, I'm great, oh, I crushed it, oh, I'm so good at it, we're just focused on me, right? We're not leaving room for God. We're not leaving room for Jesus to do anything through us. We're all about us and what we're doing by our own strength. But let me just tell you right now, you're not enough. This is the other problem with how you see you. You're not enough, and you know you're not enough. And you get most stressed out and most drained when you have to be everything to everybody. We've all been there at some point. You're working on a project at school and you're carrying the whole weight of the whole project. Nobody else is working and you're everything to everybody, right? Or you're that person in the friend group of the family. Everybody comes with their problems to you. And it's like, is anybody going to ask me how I'm doing? You got to be everything to everybody, right? You're the parent in the household that has to do everything by yourself, and you're everything to everybody. And then you got people at work, you got all these demands. It's like, you're not enough. You know you're not enough. You just get drained and you go, I'm done. But there's a power at work in us. Those of us who have allowed Jesus into our lives to work through, there's a power at work in us that surpasses all of that. There's a power at work in us that changes all of that and that can do something when we can't do it, he can. And so we leave room for that. And his power works best in weakness. There's just something about a person with a story, you know. I've had people I really look up to, I really respect. And I think, man, that's the kind of person I want to be. And then I hear their story, and I hear how far off they used to be, how messed up they used to be. All the shame and just the nasty stuff in their past. And instead of me going, ugh, that makes me respect him a little less, it does the opposite. I go, man, for them to have been there and God has brought them where they are now, for them to have allowed God to bring them where they are now, and for God to have done that with that person, that's way more incredible. In our weakness, he's made so much stronger. And we go, man, if God can do that with that person, that's amazing. If God would even want to do that with who that person used to be, that's amazing. That's amazing. But we got to find the security not in what other people think of our story or the things that we're dealing with or the things about us we don't like, but in how God sees us and what he wants to do with it. That's what it's grounded in. And look, this ain't going away today. You're not going to walk out of here and go, yeah, man, all right. Well, I'm just going to start seeing myself how God sees me. And now for the rest of your life, it's solved. You're good. It's not going to happen that way. You know it's not going to happen that way. You know you're going to do this for a little bit, and it's going to feel pretty good, and then you're going to struggle because somebody is going to say something stupid. You are going to have down days, and you're going to have to refocus yourself. It's not like it's going to be solved today. This is something, insecurity is something you probably will just have to navigate. But if we can always turn our attention back, if we can always shift our attention back to God's view of us, to how he sees us, and root ourselves in that, and run away from your inclination and your temptation to make yourself feel better about yourself based on what people think you. And listen, this is one of those messages that I'm preaching to myself here. Because I'll tell you what happened first service, and it happens all the time. Here's my temptation. I preach this message, and then I judge how I do based on the response I get from people in the crowd. A lot of sense that makes, huh? That's the natural temptation. But whether it's my words up here on stage, or your words at home with your family, or what you're doing at work, or what you're doing with your friend group, or what you're doing wherever you are at the store, whatever, it's not about you. And it's not about how they all see you. And if you will just anchor yourself in how God sees you, he can do something with your potential impact, and he can do something with your influence you could never do on your own. Any one of you. Any one of you. And if there's any part of you doubting, no, not me, I can't have an impact like that, you're wrong. You're wrong. The Spirit that's at work in us can do amazing things in our weakness if we let him. So I want to end just with the same question I started with. So what if God won't take it away? What if he just won't? What if there's just something about you that you just have to live with? What if there's just something about you that it's not going to get fixed? You just have to navigate life with this thing. Is his grace enough for you? Is how he sees you enough to keep you going? Is his grace and how he sees you and what he's done for you, is that enough to keep you grounded in him and keep going so that he can do amazing things through you? Do you believe that even in your weakness, he can do amazing things and he's made strong? And your impact, it could be unbelievable. You believe that, and is that enough? So here's 2 questions for you to kind of think about today. And if you want to talk about these on your drive home or when you go to lunch, or maybe you're just going to reflect on it personally, I want to ask 2 questions. The first question is, who could you have a bigger impact on if you stopped letting your insecurities slow you down? Who's at risk there? It's not a what, it's a who. Who is at risk there? Who in your life could you have a bigger impact on, and maybe they need it? They're dependent on your influence. Who are those people, or who is that person that your impact could be so much bigger with them if you stopped doubting God's ability to do something in you? You're not even doubting yourself. You're doubting God's ability to do something in you, and your impact could be bigger. Who is that person? That's the first question. And the second question is for you to start thinking about and visualizing and coming to grips with, how could shifting your attention and your focus to how God sees you instead of how others see you, how could that change the impact? What could happen in people's lives around you if you made that shift? If God started using you, you allowed God to start using you in bigger ways, who's the person and how could their life be totally changed if you took that step? And I'm not saying it's all going to happen in the next week. This may be a journey. But who's at risk there? Who maybe needs that influence, and how could their lives be totally changed if you made the internal shift to stop trying to secure yourself in what everyone else thinks, and you start grounding yourself and securing yourself in what God can do through you and what he wants to do through you? Let me pray for us this morning. God, thank you so much that you want to do something in us. God, we thank you that you are a God who wants to know us and wants to be part of who we are. And God, it's amazing. I've seen what you can do. God, I've seen what you can do in people's lives. I've seen what you've done in my life. And I did not do it. I could never have done it by my own power. And there were times I thought I wasn't even worth it. But God, you can do amazing things, Lord. So we give you this time this morning, God. I pray that everybody that's part of this service, whether it's today, whether it's later in the week, God, that they shift their focus towards you, God, that they take these steps towards you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Stand and worship with us. Let's sing this out. You give life, you are love, you bring light to the darkness, you give hope, you restore every heart that is broken. Sing this out. And great are you, it's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise, we pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs. talk about insecurities this morning. Sometimes when we worship, we're worried about what other people are doing around us or how we may look. But let's just sing this to God this morning. And all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. Let this be a moment between you and God. And all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. And all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. Sing this out. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. Let's sing this. Great are you, Lord. And great are you, Lord. Let's sing that this morning, every voice. And great are you, Lord. Lift your head, weary sinner. The river's just ahead. Down the path of forgiveness, salvation's waiting there. You built a mighty fortress, 10,000 burdens high. Love is here to lift you up, here to lift you high. If you're lost and wondering, come stumbling in like a prodigal. See the walls start crumbling and the gates of glory open wide. Who strayed and walked away, unspeakable things you've done. We fix our eyes on the mountain, let the past be dead and gone. Come on, saints and sinners, you can't outrun God. Whatever you done can't overcome the power of the blood. If you're lost and wondering, come stumbling in like a prodigal. See the walls start crumbling and the gates of glory open. If you're lost and wrecked again, come for being here. Thank you for worshiping with us. Our God is so great. We'll see you next week.